The carriage lurched to a stop, and Iris Calloway pressed her gloved fingers against the silk veil covering her eyes. 3 years of this. 3 years of darkness by choice, of carefully measured steps and rehearsed hesitations. 3 years of safety. "Miss Calloway, we've arrived at Thornwick Manor." The driver's voice carried through the window, respectful but distant. Everyone spoke to her that way now, as if blindness had somehow made her fragile, something to be handled with excessive care. She waited the appropriate 3 seconds before responding. Not too quick, never too eager. "Thank you. Would you assist me, please?" The door opened and cool autumn air swept into the carriage. Through the delicate weave of her veil, Iris could see everything. The grey stone facade of the manor, the perfectly manicured gardens, the imposing oak door that represented her new prison. Or sanctuary. She hadn't decided which yet. A hand appeared before her, steady and warm. "Miss Calloway, I'm Nathaniel Greaves, Duke of Thornwick. Welcome to your new home." His voice surprised her. Deep, yes, but gentler than she'd expected. Most men of his position barked their authority. This one seemed to offer it quietly, as though power didn't need to be shouted. She extended her hand with practiced uncertainty, letting it hover slightly off target. He caught it smoothly, his fingers closing around hers with careful pressure, enough to guide, not to trap. "Your Grace." She kept her face angled slightly away from him, a habit perfected over countless interactions. "You're very kind to accept guardianship of someone so burdensome." Burdensome? She heard the frown in his voice as he helped her down from the carriage. "Your mother and mine were dear friends. When I heard of your circumstances, accepting your guardianship wasn't kindness, it was obligation, a welcome one." Iris felt the solid ground beneath her feet and made a show of orienting herself, turning her head as though listening to the space around her. In truth, she was cataloguing everything: the climbing roses on the eastern wall, the slight crack in the third step, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead when he leaned closer to speak to her. "The steps are just ahead," Nathaniel said, positioning himself at her elbow. 4 of them, wide and shallow. "I've had additional railings installed on both sides. And inside I've made arrangements to ensure your comfort. My housekeeper, Mrs. Dunham, has removed any unnecessary obstacles from the main corridors." Guilt twisted in Iris's chest, sharp and familiar. He'd changed his home for her, for a lie. "You didn't need to go to such trouble," she murmured. It wasn't trouble. His hand remained steady at her elbow as they climbed the steps. "Everyone deserves to move freely in their own home. This is your home now, Miss Calloway." The entrance hall opened before them, and Iris fought to keep her expression neutral. Thornwick Manor was magnificent. Vaulted ceilings, gleaming marble floors, portraits of stern-faced ancestors watching from gilt frames, wealth and power in every corner. And she was about to deceive all of it. "Mrs. Dunham will show you to your rooms," Nathaniel continued. "We dine at 7. I hope you'll join me this evening, if you're not too exhausted from travel." "I'd be honored, Your Grace." An older woman materialized beside them, her face creased with professional sympathy. "Poor dear. Come along now. Let's get you settled. His Grace has given you the blue suite on the 2nd floor, south-facing, lovely morning light." She paused, then added hastily, "Not that the light matters, of course. I only meant—" "I understand," Iris said softly, sparing the woman further embarrassment. "I'm sure it's beautiful. As Mrs. Dunham guided her toward the grand staircase. Iris caught Nathaniel watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Concern, curiosity, something else. She turned her veiled face away and focused on climbing the stairs with appropriate caution, counting each step in her mind. 15 steps to the landing. Turn right. 20 paces down the corridor. The blue suite was indeed beautiful, spacious and airy, with furniture that had been repositioned to create clear pathways. Someone had tied silk ribbons to the posts of the 4-poster bed, presumably to help her navigate. The escritoire by the window had been cleared entirely, leaving only smooth, empty wood. "I'll leave you to rest, miss," Mrs. Dunham said. "Ring if you need anything at all." The moment the door clicked shut, Iris pulled the veil from her face and exhaled slowly. The room blurred as tears pricked her eyes, not from sadness, but from the crushing weight of what she'd become. A liar. A fraud. A woman so desperate to avoid being sold like livestock, to the highest bidder that she'd chosen blindness over matrimony. She walked to the window, no hesitation, no careful steps, and looked out over the grounds. Gardens stretched toward a distant lake, and beyond that forests thick with oak and elm. Beautiful, isolated, perfect. 3 years ago, when her parents' carriage had overturned on a rain-slick road, Iris had inherited their crumbling estate and a parade of opportunistic suitors, men who'd smiled at her father's funeral and proposed before the burial flowers had wilted, men who'd wanted her inheritance, her property, her name, everything except her. The last one had been the worst. Lord Pembroke, 40 years her senior, with wandering hands and breath that reeked of brandy. He'd cornered her in her own drawing room and informed her that marriage was inevitable. "A woman alone cannot manage an estate," he'd said, his fingers bruising her wrist. "You need a man's guidance." That night, Iris had made her choice. She'd dismissed most of the servants, citing financial difficulties. She'd begun wearing the veil. She'd learned to move through her home with eyes closed, to hesitate before doorways, to turn her face toward voices instead of faces. The suitors had vanished within weeks. After all, who wanted a blind wife? Who would risk defective heirs? She'd won her freedom and lost herself in the process. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Calloway?" "It's His Grace. May I enter?" Iris scrambled to replace the veil, securing it quickly. "Yes, of course." Nathaniel stepped inside, and she noticed he left the door properly ajar, respectful of propriety even in his own home. "I wanted to ensure you have everything you need. Mrs. Dunham can be, of course, enthusiastic in her helpfulness." "She's been wonderful," Iris assured him. "As have you, Your Grace. These accommodations are far more than I expected." "Nathaniel," he corrected gently. "If we're to live under the same roof, formality seems excessive. May I call you Iris?" The sound of her name in his voice did something strange to her pulse. "Yes, I'd like that." He moved closer, and she tracked his approach through the veil. The confident stride, the way he clasped his hands behind his back, as though restraining the impulse to reach out. "I know this must be overwhelming. A new home, a new guardian. If you need time to adjust, please don't feel obligated to dine with me this evening." "I want to," she said, surprising herself with the truth in it. "I've been alone for a long time. Company would be nice." His smile was small but genuine. "Then I'll look forward to it. 7 o'clock, I'll come to escort you down." After he left, Iris sank onto the bed and dropped her face into her hands. This was supposed to be simple. Accept guardianship, maintain the pretense, avoid marriage, live quietly until she reached her majority and could claim full control of her inheritance. She hadn't accounted for kindness, hadn't expected a duke who installed railings and worried about her comfort, hadn't prepared for the guilt that came with deceiving someone who seemed genuinely decent. The afternoon passed in careful exploration. Iris memorized the layout of her suite, then ventured into the corridor with appropriate caution, one hand trailing along the wall. A maid spotted her and immediately rushed to assist. "Oh, miss, you shouldn't be wandering alone. Let me help you back to your room." "I'm only trying to familiarize myself with the house," Iris protested gently. "So, of course. But His Grace would have my head if anything happened to you. Come, let me show you to the drawing room. You can rest there until dinner." The drawing room was warm and comfortable, with a fire crackling in the hearth. The maid settled Iris in a chair near the window, "For the warmth, miss," and disappeared to fetch tea. Through her veil, Iris studied the room. Paintings of landscapes and hunting scenes lined the walls. Books filled floor-to-ceiling shelves. A pianoforte stood in the corner, its surface gleaming. Everything spoke of wealth and taste and a life completely foreign to her own reduced circumstances. The tea arrived with an assortment of biscuits. Iris ate carefully, aware that even this simple act required performance. She reached for her cup with slight hesitation, felt for the saucer's edge, lifted with both hands. Every movement calculated, every gesture a lie. "You play beautifully." Iris jerked, nearly spilling her tea. She hadn't heard Nathaniel enter. "I'm sorry." "The pianoforte." He gestured toward the instrument. "My mother mentioned in her letters that you were quite accomplished. Before I lost my sight." She set down her cup carefully. "Yes, I played. The instrument is yours to use, if you'd like. I could have it moved to your rooms if that would be more comfortable." The offer was so casually generous that it stole her breath. That's not necessary. I haven't played in years. I'm not sure I'd remember. Muscle memory is a curious thing. Nathaniel settled into the chair across from her. My sister Beatrice says that losing one sense often sharpens the others. Perhaps your fingers would remember what your eyes can't see. Iris stilled. Your sister is blind since birth. His voice carried no pity, only matter-of-fact affection. She lives with my mother at our country estate in Somerset. Beatrice is remarkable. She reads, embroiders, even rides with assistants. She's never let her blindness define her. The irony cut deep. Here Iris sat, using blindness as a shield, while Nathaniel clearly loved and admired his sister for overcoming the very condition Iris was faking. She sounds extraordinary, Iris managed. She is. Nathaniel leaned forward, his expression earnest. Which is why I wanted you to know. I don't see your blindness as a limitation, Iris. I see it as merely one aspect of who you are. You're welcome here not out of pity, but because you deserve a home. A real one. Iris felt the words lodge in her throat. How did she respond to that? How did she accept kindness, built on deception? Thank you, she whispered, hating how inadequate it sounded. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the fire crackling between them. Then Nathaniel spoke again, his tone lighter. I should warn you, my cousins Marcus and Julian will be dining with us this evening. They assist with managing the estate's business interests. They can be somewhat tedious in their conversation. Feel free to plead exhaustion if they begin discussing crop rotations. Iris smiled despite herself. I'll keep that in mind. Good. He stood and she heard the smile in his voice. I'll return at 7 to escort you down. Try not to let Mrs. Dunham fuss over you too much in the meantime. After he left, Iris sat perfectly still, her mind racing. This was going to be harder than she'd anticipated. Much harder. Because Nathaniel Greaves wasn't the cold, distant aristocrat she'd expected. He was kind, thoughtful. The sort of man who made accommodations for a blind ward without making her feel less than whole. The sort of man she could actually like. And that made lying to him infinitely worse. At precisely 7 o'clock, Nathaniel knocked on her door. Iris had prepared carefully, a simple dinner gown in deep green, her veil securely in place, her expression composed. She rose when he entered, turning her face toward his voice. You look lovely, he said, and she thought she heard genuine warmth in it. Thank you, though I'll have to trust your judgment on that. Then trust it. He offered his arm. Shall we? The dining room was everything Iris had expected. Long mahogany table, crystal chandeliers, more silver than one household could possibly need. 2 men already sat at the table, both rising as she entered. Gentlemen, may I present Miss Iris Calloway, my ward? Iris, these are my cousins, Marcus and Julian Greaves. Miss Calloway. The first voice was smooth, practiced. Marcus, she presumed. What a pleasure. Nathaniel has told us so much about you. Has he? Iris angled her head toward the voice, keeping her expression pleasantly neutral. I hope he hasn't oversold my limited charms. A pause. Then Julian laughed, higher pitched than his brother's voice, slightly nervous. You're charming already, Miss Calloway. Please sit. Nathaniel guided her to a chair, his hand steady on her elbow. He waited until she was settled before taking his own seat at the head of the table. Dinner began with practiced efficiency. Servants appeared with courses, soup, fish, roasted pheasant. Iris ate with careful attention, reaching for utensils with slight hesitation, cutting her food into smaller pieces than necessary. So, Miss Calloway, Marcus said after the soup course, Nathaniel mentioned you've been living alone at your family's estate since your parents' passing. That must have been terribly difficult. It was an adjustment, Iris replied carefully. But I managed. Managed? Julian's tone carried an edge of disbelief. Forgive me, but how does a blind woman manage an estate alone? Nathaniel's voice cut across the table, sharp as a blade. The same way anyone manages, with intelligence and determination. Iris's blindness doesn't diminish her capabilities, Julian. Of course not, Julian backtracked quickly. I meant no offense. None taken, Iris said smoothly, though she noted the exchange. Nathaniel had defended her without hesitation. Another layer of guilt to add to the growing pile. The conversation drifted to estate business, tenant concerns, crop yields, investments. Iris listened with half an ear, more focused on the dynamics around the table. Marcus spoke with casual authority, as though he had every right to direct the estate's affairs. Julian deferred to his brother, but watched Nathaniel with something that looked like calculation. "We've been considering the textile mill investment we discussed," Marcus said, swirling wine in his glass. "The returns could be substantial if we act quickly." "The report seemed promising," Nathaniel agreed, "but I want to review the contracts more thoroughly before committing funds." "Time-sensitive opportunities rarely wait for thorough review, cousin." Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Trust is sometimes more valuable than caution." Nathaniel's expression remained neutral. "In business, I prefer to trust numbers rather than promises." Iris caught the tension beneath the polite words. These men might be family, but there was something here, some undercurrent of conflict she couldn't quite identify. The meal continued with lighter topics. Marcus asked about London gossip. Julian mentioned an upcoming house party. Nathaniel answered with practiced politeness, but seemed distracted, his attention drifting occasionally to Iris. She wondered what he saw when he looked at her. A fragile creature to be protected, a burden accepted out of family obligation, or something else entirely. "Miss Calloway, do you ride?" Julian asked suddenly. Iris paused, fork halfway to her mouth. "I used to. Before. Pity. The grounds here are perfect for morning rides." He sounded genuinely regretful, which surprised her. "Though I suppose it's not safe for someone who can't see." "Beatrice rides," Nathaniel interjected. "With the right accommodations, blindness needn't prevent it." "Ah yes, your sister." Marcus's tone shifted, becoming overly careful. "How is dear Beatrice? Still at Somerset with your mother?" "Quite well. She may visit in a few weeks, actually. I think she and Iris would enjoy each other's company." Iris's blood went cold. A visit from Nathaniel's truly blind sister, someone who would immediately recognize Iris's deception. This was a complication she hadn't anticipated. "That would be lovely," she said, hoping her voice didn't betray her panic. After dinner, Nathaniel escorted her to the drawing room for tea. His cousins made polite excuses and disappeared toward what Marcus called the business office. "I apologize for their behavior at dinner," Nathaniel said once they were alone. "Julian especially can be tactless." He seemed curious, not cruel. Iris accepted the teacup he pressed into her hands, and Marcus appeared quite invested in estate matters. Too invested sometimes. Nathaniel's voice carried an edge of frustration. "They've been helpful since my father's death, but occasionally they forget whose estate this actually is. Family can be complicated." "Indeed." He settled into the chair beside her, closer than strictly proper. "Tell me about yours. Your parents, were you close?" The question caught her off guard. Most people avoided mentioning her dead parents, as if grief were contagious. "Very close," she said softly. "My father taught me to read Latin. My mother insisted I learn estate management, even though society claimed ladies had no head for such things." She smiled at the memory. "They were unconventional. They sound wonderful. I'm sorry you lost them." "So am I." The words came out more raw than she'd intended. Everything changed after they died. The estate, the suitors, the... She stopped herself before saying too much. "The suitors?" Nathaniel's voice sharpened. "They bothered you. Some were more persistent than others." Iris chose her words carefully. "They saw opportunity in my circumstances. A young woman alone with property to claim. It became uncomfortable. And then you lost your sight." "Yes." The lie tasted bitter on her tongue. "And then I lost my sight." Silence stretched between them. Then Nathaniel spoke, his voice softer than before. "I'm glad you're here, Iris. I know this arrangement wasn't your choice, but I hope you'll come to see Thornwick as more than just a refuge. I hope you'll see it as home." Iris turned her veiled face toward him, wishing desperately that she could meet his eyes honestly. "You're very kind." "I'm not kind, I'm merely trying to be decent." He stood, and she heard the rustle of fabric as he straightened his jacket. "It's late. Let me escort you to your room." They climbed the stairs in comfortable silence, his hand light on her elbow. At her door he paused. "Sleep well, Iris. Tomorrow, if you'd like, I could show you the gardens. They're accessible enough, and the morning air is pleasant this time of year." "I'd like that." And she would. Despite everything, despite the lies and the guilt, she genuinely wanted to spend more time with him. That realization terrified her more than any suitor ever had. In her room alone, Iris removed the veil and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Green eyes stared back, clear, functional, damning. "What are you doing?" she whispered to herself. But she knew the answer. She was lying. She was hiding. She was doing exactly what she'd done for 3 years, choosing safety over truth, isolation over vulnerability. And now she was lying to a man who'd shown her nothing but kindness. Iris pressed her palms against the cool glass of the mirror. Tomorrow she would walk the gardens with Nathaniel. She would maintain her deception. She would continue this careful dance of half-truths and calculated movements. Because the alternative, admitting what she'd done, facing the consequences, risking exposure, was unthinkable. Or so she told herself as sleep finally claimed her, dreams haunted by dark eyes, and a voice that asked for trust she couldn't give. The morning sun filtered through Iris's window, warm and golden. She'd woken early, unable to sleep past dawn despite her exhaustion. 3 years of living alone had made her accustomed to silence, to her own company. Thornwick Manor, with its bustling servants and occupied rooms, felt almost overwhelming. She dressed carefully in a walking dress of pale blue, then secured her veil. The silk settled against her face like a second skin, familiar, protective, suffocating. A knock at the door announced breakfast. A young maid entered with a tray, her movements careful and overly cautious. "His Grace thought you might prefer to breakfast in your room, miss, until you're more comfortable with the house." Translation: Nathaniel was trying to spare her the awkwardness of navigating an unfamiliar dining room. More kindness, more guilt. "That's very thoughtful," Iris said. "Please convey my thanks." After the maid left, Iris ate mechanically, her mind elsewhere. She needed to establish routines, patterns that would make her deception sustainable. The longer she stayed at Thornwick, the more careful she'd have to be. Another knock interrupted her thoughts. "It's Nathaniel. Are you ready for our walk?" Iris rose, smoothing her skirts. "Yes. Give me just a moment." She opened the door to find him dressed for the outdoors, boots, riding coat, hair slightly tousled from the morning breeze. He looked less like a duke and more like a country gentleman, and the transformation was dangerously appealing. "The gardens are at their best in morning light," he said, offering his arm. "I thought we'd start with the rose garden. The paths there are smooth and easy to navigate." They descended the stairs together, Iris counting each step out of habit. Outside, the air carried the scent of autumn. Wood smoke, damp earth, the last roses clinging to their vines. Nathaniel guided her along a gravel path, his pace deliberately slow. "There are benches every 20 paces or so. I'll warn you before we reach them. You've thought of everything." "I've tried. Beatrice has taught me much about accommodation. She's fiercely independent, but she also knows when to accept help gracefully." He paused. "I hope you'll feel comfortable asking for assistance when you need it." "I will." Another lie. Iris had spent 3 years learning to need no one. They walked in silence for a few minutes, the only sounds birdsong and gravel crunching beneath their feet. Iris could see everything, the carefully pruned rose bushes, the ornamental fountains, the distant maze of hedges. She saw it all, and pretended she saw nothing. "Tell me about your estate," Nathaniel said suddenly. "Calloway House, isn't it? What's it like?" Iris felt her throat tighten. "Smaller than this. Older. It was built in Queen Elizabeth's time, all stone and draughty corridors. My mother always complained about the cold, but my father loved the history of it." "You sound fond of it." "I am. It's home. Or it was." She hesitated, then added quietly, "I had to dismiss most of the staff. The estate wasn't generating enough income, and I couldn't justify keeping people on when I could barely pay them." "That must have been difficult." "Making people redundant is always difficult, but living alone was—" She trailed off, unsure how to explain. "It was necessary, because of the suitors." "Yes." Iris turned her face toward the sound of water. A fountain, she could see it just ahead. "When I was sighted, they pursued me for my inheritance. When I became blind, they disappeared. It's remarkable how quickly desirability fades when a woman is perceived as defective." Nathaniel stopped walking, and she felt his hand tighten on her arm. "You're not defective." "I know that, but they didn't." The words came out sharper than she'd intended. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't speak so bitterly. You're allowed to be bitter. What you experienced was—" He stopped himself, seeming to search for words. "Men who would abandon you for losing your sight aren't worthy of your time or thoughts." Perhaps, but their abandonment gave me something valuable. Freedom. For the first time in my life, no one was trying to control me, marry me, or manage me. I was simply left alone. Is that what you want? To be left alone? The question hung in the air between them. Iris didn't have an answer. 3 years ago, solitude had felt like salvation. Now, standing in morning sunlight with Nathaniel's steady presence beside her, she wasn't sure anymore. "I want," she said carefully, "to make my own choices, to live on my own terms." "Then that's what you'll have here. I'm not your jailer, Iris. I'm merely a concerned friend." Friend. The word settled warm in her chest, dangerous and welcome all at once. They continued walking, and Nathaniel described the gardens with casual detail, the types of roses, the fountain imported from Italy, the hedge maze his grandfather had planted. His voice was soothing, and Iris found herself relaxing despite her circumstances. Then he said something that made her freeze. "The conservatory is just ahead. I've had it converted into a sort of indoor garden. The paths are marked with different textures, smooth stone, rough gravel, wooden boards. Beatrice designed it when she visited last year. She said varying textures help with navigation." Another reminder of his sister. Another layer of deception Iris would have to maintain. Inside the conservatory, warmth and humidity enveloped them. Iris could see exotic plants, flowers in impossible colors, vines climbing toward the glass ceiling. It was beautiful. It was wasted on her, supposedly. Nathaniel guided her along a path, and she felt the texture change beneath her feet, stone to gravel to wood, just as he'd described. "Beatrice can identify plants by scent alone," he said. "She's better at it than I am, honestly. Perhaps she could teach you when she visits." "Perhaps." Iris's voice came out strained. "Are you tired? We can return to the house." "No, I'm fine, just overwhelmed. This is all so different from what I'm accustomed to." They found a bench near a cluster of orchids. Nathaniel helped her sit, then settled beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, but not improper. "May I ask you something personal?" His voice carried a note of hesitation. Iris tensed. "Of course. Do you ever miss it? Seeing?" The question pierced straight through her careful defenses. She couldn't tell him the truth, that she saw everything, that she'd never stopped seeing. But she also couldn't lie completely, not about something this raw. "Every day," she whispered. And that, at least, was honest. She missed being able to see without pretending she couldn't. "I miss seeing faces, miss reading expressions, miss knowing if someone is smiling at me or sneering." "I'm smiling," Nathaniel said softly, "in case you were wondering." Iris turned toward him, and through the veil she could see it was true. Not a polite social smile, but something genuine, something warm. "Thank you," she managed. They sat in comfortable silence, and Iris found herself cataloguing details she shouldn't notice, the way his hands rested on his knees, strong and capable, the slight crease between his brows that appeared when he was thinking, the way he looked at her, as if she were a puzzle he wanted to solve but was too polite to force. "I should return to the house," she said finally, standing before she could do something foolish like cry or confess or reach out to touch his face, just to see if it felt as warm as it looked. "Of course." Nathaniel rose with her, offering his arm again. "I have estate business this afternoon, but perhaps we could take tea together later. I find I enjoy your company. I enjoy yours as well." The truth slipped out before she could stop it. As they walked back to the manor, Iris felt the weight of her deception growing heavier. This wasn't supposed to happen. Nathaniel wasn't supposed to be kind, attentive, genuinely pleasant to be around. He was supposed to be a distant guardian, nothing more. But he wasn't, and that changed everything. The afternoon passed quietly. Iris remained in her room, pleading fatigue when Mrs. Dunham came to check on her. In truth, she needed time away from Nathaniel's unsettling kindness. Time to shore up her defenses and remind herself why the lie was necessary. She stood at the window, veil discarded, and watched the grounds below. Servants moved about their duties. Gardeners tended the roses. And near the stables she saw two figures, Marcus and Julian, engaged in what looked like heated conversation. She was too far away to hear, but their body language spoke volumes. Marcus gestured sharply, jabbing a finger toward the manor. Julian shook his head, his posture defensive. Then Marcus grabbed his brother's arm, pulling him closer, saying something that made Julian pale and nod rapidly. Iris frowned. Family disputes were common enough, but something about the interaction felt wrong. Urgent, almost desperate. A knock at her door made her scramble for the veil. "Yes?" "Miss Calloway. His Grace requests your presence for tea in the drawing room." Iris secured the veil and opened the door. "Of course, please lead the way." The drawing room was warm and inviting, afternoon sun streaming through tall windows. Nathaniel stood when she entered, and she noticed he'd changed clothes. No longer the country gentleman, but the Duke, formal and proper in dark coat and crisp cravat. "I hope you rested well," he said, guiding her to a seat. "Very well, thank you." Tea arrived with an assortment of cakes. They fell into easy conversation. Books they'd read, music they enjoyed, childhood memories. Nathaniel had a dry wit that surprised her, and Iris found herself laughing more than she had in years. "You have a lovely laugh," he said suddenly. "It's unguarded. Real." Iris felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I don't laugh often these days." "Why not?" "Because laughter draws attention, and I prefer to remain unnoticed." Nathaniel was quiet for a moment. Then, "That's a lonely way to live." "Perhaps, but it's safe." "Safe isn't the same as happy." The words hit harder than they should have. Iris set down her teacup carefully, buying time to compose herself. "Happiness is a luxury I can't afford right now." "I disagree." Nathaniel leaned forward, and she could feel the intensity of his gaze even through the veil. "You deserve happiness, Iris. You deserve laughter and companionship and all the things you've denied yourself. Your blindness doesn't negate your worth." If only he knew. If only she could tell him that blindness wasn't the real barrier, that the lie was the prison she'd built around herself. "You're very kind," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not being kind. I'm being honest." He reached out, and for a heart-stopping moment she thought he might touch her face, might lift the veil. Instead, his fingers brushed her hand where it rested on the arm of her chair. "You're allowed to want more than mere survival, Iris." The touch sent electricity through her. She should pull away, should maintain proper distance. Instead, she turned her hand over, letting her palm meet his. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, steady, real. They sat like that for a long moment, connected by this simple touch that felt more intimate than anything Iris had experienced in her carefully controlled life. Then footsteps echoed in the hallway, and Nathaniel withdrew his hand smoothly, just as Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Forgive the interruption, cousin. I need your signature on those investment documents before the messenger departs for London." Nathaniel's expression shifted, becoming cooler. "I thought I made it clear I wanted time to review them more thoroughly." "You did. But the opportunity closes tonight. We need to act now or lose our chance entirely." Convenient timing. Nathaniel stood, and Iris heard the skepticism in his voice. "Very well. I'll review them in my study. Miss Calloway, please excuse me. I'll see you at dinner." After he left, Marcus remained in the doorway, his gaze fixed on Iris in a way that made her skin crawl. She kept her face angled away, her posture careful. "Miss Calloway," he said finally, "I hope you're settling in well." "Very well, thank you. Nathaniel seems quite taken with you. It's been years since I've seen him so attentive to a woman's company." Iris didn't respond, sensing a trap in the observation. Marcus continued, his voice smooth as silk. "Of course, his first loyalty will always be to the family. The Greaves name, our reputation and standing. I hope you understand that. I'm his ward, Mr. Greaves, not a threat to his family's reputation." "No, of course not." Marcus stepped closer, and Iris fought the urge to recoil. "I merely mention it because Nathaniel has a tendency to be overly generous with those he perceives as vulnerable. It's an admirable quality, but sometimes it blinds him to practical realities." The emphasis on blinds felt deliberate, almost mocking. "If you'll excuse me," Iris said, standing, "I should rest before dinner." "Of course. Allow me to escort you to your room." "That's not necessary." "I insist. Marcus offered his arm, leaving her little choice. They walked in silence, Marcus's grip on her elbow firmer than Nathaniel's, more possessive. At her door, he paused. "A word of advice, Miss Calloway. Thornwick is a complicated household. Old money, older secrets. It would be wise to remember your place here." "And what place is that?" Iris asked, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "Guest, dependent, charity case." Marcus smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Certainly not family. Good evening, Miss Calloway." He left her standing in the hallway, anger and unease churning in her stomach. She entered her room and locked the door, then ripped off her veil and paced the floor. Who did Marcus think he was, speaking to her that way? And why did it feel like a warning? She thought about the heated conversation she'd witnessed between the cousins earlier, about Marcus's insistence on Nathaniel signing documents without proper review, about the way Julian had looked frightened. Something was wrong here. She could feel it. The same instinct that had warned her away from predatory suitors now screaming that Marcus Greaves was dangerous. But what could she do? She was supposed to be blind, helpless, dependent. She couldn't exactly announce she'd seen something suspicious. Unless... Iris moved to the escritoire and found paper and ink. Her handwriting was distinctive. She'd have to be careful. But perhaps she could leave an anonymous note for Nathaniel, warning him to review those documents carefully. Before she could second-guess herself, she wrote quickly, "Your Grace, please scrutinize any investments proposed by your cousins. All may not be as it seems. A concerned observer." She folded the note and tucked it into her bodice. Tomorrow, she'd find a way to slip it into Nathaniel's study. It was risky, but if Marcus was attempting something underhanded, Nathaniel deserved to know. For now, she had to prepare for dinner and pretend Marcus's veiled threats hadn't rattled her. Iris replaced her veil and sat by the window, watching darkness fall over Thornwick's grounds. She'd come here seeking safety, seeking escape from a world that wanted to control her. Instead, she'd found a different kind of danger entirely, one that came with dark eyes, gentle hands, and a voice that made her want to stop hiding. And she had no idea what to do about it. Dinner that evening was a tense affair. Nathaniel seemed distracted, his attention divided between the meal and whatever thoughts occupied his mind. Marcus and Julian exchanged meaningful glances across the table, and Iris felt like an outsider watching a play whose plot she didn't fully understand. "The documents are in order," Nathaniel said finally, setting down his fork. "I've signed them." Marcus smiled, triumphant, satisfied. "Excellent. The returns should be substantial. They'd better be. It's a significant investment. Trust me, cousin, this venture will secure the family's financial future for generations." Something in Marcus's tone made Iris's instincts scream danger, but she had no proof, no way to voice her concerns without revealing herself. The meal continued with forced pleasantries. Iris picked at her food, hyper-aware of the undercurrents swirling around the table. When dessert finally arrived, she could barely force herself to eat. "Miss Calloway, you're very quiet tonight," Julian observed. "Are you feeling unwell?" "Just tired," she replied. "It's been an eventful day." "Of course." Nathaniel's voice carried concern. "Perhaps you should retire early. I'll have Mrs. Dunham send up a tonic." "That's not necessary, but thank you." After dinner, Nathaniel escorted her to the drawing room, but his manner was distant, preoccupied. Iris could feel him pulling away, and she didn't understand why. "Are you all right?" she asked quietly. He looked at her, really looked, and she thought she saw something conflicted in his expression. "I'm fine. Just business matters weighing on my mind. The investment. Among other things." He was silent for a moment, then added, "Iris, if you ever need anything, if you ever feel unsafe or uncomfortable here, you would tell me, wouldn't you?" The question startled her. "Of course, but I'm perfectly safe. You've been nothing but kind." "I'm not talking about me." His voice dropped lower. "My cousins can be difficult. If they ever make you uncomfortable, I want to know." So he'd sensed it too. The tension, the threat beneath Marcus's polite words. "I'll tell you," Iris promised, meaning it. Nathaniel seemed to relax slightly. "Good. Now let me escort you to your room. You look exhausted, and I've kept you too long." At her door, he hesitated, as if wanting to say something more. Instead, he simply bid her good night and disappeared down the hallway, leaving Iris alone with her tangled thoughts and the note still hidden in her bodice. Tomorrow, she decided. Tomorrow she'd find a way to warn him. Tonight she'd lie awake and wonder how much longer she could maintain this careful deception before everything came crashing down around her. The morning brought unexpected news. Iris was breaking her fast when Mrs. Dunham appeared, her expression troubled. "His Grace left early for London, miss. Business matters that couldn't wait. He asked me to convey his apologies and said he'd return within the week." A week? Iris felt her stomach drop. She'd planned to slip the warning note into his study today, and now he was gone. "Did he say what business?" Iris asked carefully. "Something about investments and contracts. Mr. Marcus and Mr. Julian accompanied him." Mrs. Dunham lowered her voice. "Between you and me, miss, His Grace looked quite displeased about the whole thing." After the housekeeper left, Iris sat perfectly still, her mind racing. Nathaniel had signed Marcus's documents, and now they'd all gone to London together. This felt wrong, very wrong. She needed to know what was in those papers. Rising, she made her way carefully down the hallway, too carefully, aware that servants might be watching. At Nathaniel's study door, she paused. If she was caught entering alone, it would be suspicious. But if she didn't look, she might miss the chance to protect him from whatever his cousins were planning. The study was empty, mercifully. Iris slipped inside and closed the door quietly behind her. For the first time since arriving at Thornwick, she removed her veil while outside her room. The freedom was dizzying. She moved quickly to the desk, rifling through papers. Most were standard estate business, tenant agreements, crop reports, correspondence. Nothing about investments. Then she found it, a copy of the contract Nathaniel had signed. She scanned the pages quickly, her heart sinking with each paragraph. It wasn't just an investment. It was a transfer of assets hidden beneath layers of legal language. By signing, Nathaniel had essentially given Marcus control over a significant portion of the Thornwick holdings. Not permanently, but for a period of 2 years, to facilitate the efficient management of investment returns. It was legal theft, wrapped in proper terminology. Iris's hands shook as she set down the papers. She needed proof, needed to show Nathaniel what he'd actually signed. She was reaching for the documents when the study door opened. Iris spun around, her heart in her throat, expecting a servant. Instead, she found herself staring at Marcus Greaves. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Marcus's eyes traveled from her unveiled face to the papers on the desk, to her obviously seeing eyes, wide with shock and guilt. Then he smiled. "Well, well," he said softly, closing the door behind him. "This is interesting." Iris's mind raced. Lie, confess, attack. "You're not blind," Marcus continued, moving closer. "How long have you been deceiving Nathaniel?" "I don't know what you—" "Don't!" He grabbed her wrist, his grip bruising. "I saw you reading those contracts. Blind people don't read standard text, Miss Calloway. So let's not waste time with denials." Iris tried to pull away, but his hold tightened. "Let go of me." "In a moment. First, we need to discuss terms." "Terms? You keep quiet about what you've discovered in those documents, and I keep quiet about your little deception. Nathaniel would be devastated to learn his ward has been lying to him so thoroughly, don't you think?" The threat was clear. Iris felt trapped, cornered by her own lies. "Why are you stealing from him?" she demanded. "He's your family." Marcus laughed, cold and bitter. "Family?" Nathaniel inherited everything. The title, the estates, the fortune. Julian and I got nothing but the privilege of managing his wealth while he plays the benevolent duke. Well, I'm tired of managing other people's money. It's time I managed my own. This is fraud. This is justice, and you're going to help me keep it hidden. Because if you don't, I'll tell Nathaniel everything. The blindness, the lies, the 3 years of deception. Imagine his face when he learns the truth. Imagine his disappointment. The words hit like physical blows. Because Marcus was right, Nathaniel would be devastated, betrayed. Everything they'd built, the tentative friendship and growing trust, would shatter. "I need time to think," Iris said, hating how weak her voice sounded. "You have until Nathaniel returns from London. 1 week to decide, his financial future or your comfortable deception." Marcus released her wrist and stepped back. "Choose wisely, Miss Calloway, and put your veil back on. Wouldn't want the servants to notice anything unusual." He left her alone in the study, and Iris sank into Nathaniel's chair, trembling. This couldn't be happening. She'd come to Thornwick to escape complications, and now she was drowning in them. She could tell Nathaniel the truth, about her sight, about Marcus's scheme, everything. But that meant losing his trust, his friendship, possibly his protection. She'd be exposed, vulnerable, exactly what she'd spent 3 years avoiding. Or she could stay silent, keep her secret, and watch Marcus steal from a man who'd shown her nothing but kindness. Iris pressed her hands against her face, willing herself not to cry. There had to be another way. Some solution that didn't require choosing between her safety and her conscience. She just had to find it. Replacing her veil with shaking hands, Iris left the study and returned to her room. The next week would determine everything. Her future, Nathaniel's fortune, and whether the connection between them could survive the truth. And Iris had absolutely no idea which choice would destroy her more completely. The week passed in agonizing slowness. Iris remained in her room as much as possible, pleading illness to avoid Marcus. But he found ways to remind her of their arrangement. Meaningful glances during meals, casual mentions of Nathaniel's return, once even a note slipped under her door that read simply, "Tick-tock." She tried to formulate a plan. If she could find additional proof of Marcus's fraud, something undeniable, perhaps she could expose him without revealing her own deception. But she had no access to business records, no way to investigate without drawing suspicion. On the 5th day, Iris received unexpected news. "Miss Calloway." Mrs. Dunham appeared at her door, slightly flustered. "There's a young lady arrived, Lady Beatrice Greaves. She says she's His Grace's sister and wishes to meet you." Iris felt the room tilt. Beatrice, Nathaniel's truly blind sister, arrived early and unannounced. "Show her to the drawing room," Iris said, her mind racing. "I'll be down shortly." She stared at her reflection in the mirror, veil in place, panic clawing at her throat. Beatrice would know. One conversation, maybe less, and she'd realize Iris was a fraud. Unless... Iris took a deep breath and made a decision. She couldn't keep lying. Not to someone who actually lived with blindness, not to Nathaniel's beloved sister. When she entered the drawing room, she found a young woman standing by the window, her face turned toward the light. Beatrice Greaves was lovely, dark hair like her brother's, delicate features, and an expression of serene contentment that made Iris ache with envy. "Miss Calloway?" Beatrice turned toward her voice, smiling. "I'm so pleased to finally meet you. Nathaniel has written such wonderful things about you in his letters." "Has he?" Iris's voice came out strangled. "Oh yes, he said you were intelligent and funny and that you had a spirit he found quite refreshing." Beatrice moved toward a chair with easy confidence, her hand trailing along the furniture to guide herself. "I hope you don't mind my arriving unannounced. I convinced Mother to let me visit early. I've been dying to meet you." Iris sat carefully, watching Beatrice's movements. Everything about the young woman was natural, unaffected. The way she tilted her head to listen, the way her hands rested in her lap, still but not rigid, the way her eyes didn't quite focus on anything specific. "Your brother has been very kind," Iris managed. "Nathaniel is kind to everyone, but he spoke of you differently, with warmth. It's been a long time since I've heard that tone when he discusses a woman." Beatrice leaned forward conspiratorially. "I think he's quite taken with you. I'm just his ward." "You're more than that. I can hear it in your voice when you speak of him." Could she? Iris felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she hadn't expected. They talked for over an hour, about books, music, life at Somerset. Beatrice was charming and witty, with none of the bitterness Iris might have expected from someone dealt her particular hand. Instead, she spoke of her life with joy and acceptance. "People pity me sometimes," Beatrice said at one point. "They assume blindness makes me helpless or miserable, but I'm neither. I have limitations, yes, but I also have abilities others don't appreciate. I notice things sighted people miss, the tremor in a voice that betrays a lie, the shift in breathing that indicates discomfort. Blindness has taught me to see the world differently." Guilt twisted in Iris's chest. "You're remarkable." "I'm simply myself." Beatrice tilted her head. "May I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "When did you lose your sight?" Here it was, the moment of truth. Iris could lie, could maintain the deception with Beatrice just as she had with everyone else. But looking at this young woman's honest face, at the genuine warmth in her expression, she couldn't do it. "I didn't," Iris whispered. I can see perfectly." Silence filled the room. Beatrice's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture, a tension that hadn't been there before. "I see," she said finally. "Or rather, you see. How long have you been pretending?" 3 years, since my parents died." The confession poured out of Iris in a rush. "I was being pursued by men who only wanted my inheritance. When I claimed to be blind, they left me alone. It was supposed to be temporary, just until I reached my majority, but then your brother offered guardianship, and I thought—" "You thought you'd continue the lie?" "Yes." Iris felt tears burning behind her eyes. "I'm sorry. I know how this must seem, using your condition as a shield, lying to your brother. It's unforgivable." Beatrice was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I can't lie to you, not you. You've lived the reality I've been faking. You deserve better than my deception. And my brother? Doesn't he deserve better too?" "Yes." "Heavens, yes." Iris's voice broke. "He deserves the truth. But if I tell him, I lose everything. His protection, his trust, possibly even my safety. The men who pursued me before will return once they know I can see. So you're trapped by your own lie." "Yes." Beatrice stood and moved toward Iris with uncanny accuracy. She reached out, her hand finding Iris's shoulder with gentle pressure. "I should be angry," she said softly. "You've appropriated my experience for your own benefit. You've deceived my brother, whom I love dearly, but I find I'm not angry, I'm sad." "Sad?" "For you. Because you've built a prison around yourself and called it safety. Because you've denied yourself the chance to be truly seen." Beatrice's fingers squeezed gently. "My brother is falling in love with a ghost, Iris. With someone who doesn't fully exist. Don't you think he deserves to love the real you?" The words shattered something inside Iris. She bowed her head, tears finally spilling free. "I don't know if the real me is worth loving." "Then you're a fool." Beatrice's voice carried surprising steel. "I've spent an hour with you, and I can already see qualities worth treasuring. Intelligence, wit, vulnerability beneath your careful control. You're not your deception, Iris. You're what's underneath it. Your brother will hate me when he knows. Perhaps he'll surprise you." Beatrice returned to her seat. "I won't tell him. This is your confession to make in your own time. But you can't hide forever. Eventually the truth finds us all." Iris wiped her eyes carefully, grateful for the veil that hid her tears. "Thank you for not exposing me. I'm not protecting you. I'm protecting my brother. He needs to hear this from you, not from me." Beatrice's expression softened. "But know this, when you do tell him, I'll be there. Not to condemn you, but to help him understand, and maybe to help you both find a way forward." "Why would you do that?" "Because Nathaniel has been alone for too long, and despite your lies, I think you might be good for him. The real you, I mean, not the ghost you've been playing." They sat together in silence, and Iris felt something shift inside her. A crack in the armor she'd built, letting in dangerous light. She'd told the truth to Beatrice. She'd survived the confession. Perhaps she could tell Nathaniel too. Perhaps. That evening, Marcus found her in the hallway outside her room. "I saw Beatrice arrive," he said, his voice low and threatening. "Did you tell her about our arrangement?" "I told her nothing that concerns you." "Good. Keep it that way. Nathaniel returns tomorrow. I trust you've made your decision." Iris met his eyes through her veil, and for the first time since he'd confronted her, she felt something other than fear. She felt anger. "I'll tell Nathaniel everything," she said clearly. "About your fraud and about my deception, all of it." Marcus's expression darkened. "That would be very unwise." "Possibly, but it's the right thing to do." "The right thing?" He laughed harshly. You've spent 3 years lying about being blind, and now you want to claim moral high ground? Nathaniel will see you for the manipulative fraud you are." "Perhaps, but at least I'll have stopped being one." Iris pushed past him toward her room. "Do your worst, Marcus. I'm done hiding." She closed and locked the door behind her, her heart hammering. She'd done it. She'd chosen. Conscience over comfort, truth over safety. Now she just had to survive the consequences. Nathaniel returned to Thornwick the next afternoon, looking exhausted and troubled. Iris watched from her window as his carriage pulled up, as he climbed down and stood for a long moment staring up at the house, as if it were a burden rather than a home. Marcus and Julian arrived shortly after in a separate carriage, both wearing expressions of smug satisfaction that made Iris's skin crawl. That evening, Nathaniel joined her and Beatrice for dinner. His manner was strained, distracted. He barely ate, barely spoke except in monosyllables. Something had happened in London, something that clearly weighed on him. "Brother," Beatrice said gently. "What's wrong?" "Nothing, just business complications." He set down his fork. "I'm sorry, I'm poor company tonight." "You're always good company," Beatrice insisted, "but you're clearly troubled. Can we help?" Nathaniel glanced at Iris, and she saw something in his eyes. Doubt, suspicion, pain. Her breath caught. Did he know? Had Marcus told him already? "I need to speak with you, Iris," he said finally. "In private, after dinner." "Of course." Her voice barely worked. The meal continued in tense silence. When it finally ended, Nathaniel escorted her to his study, the same room where Marcus had confronted her a week ago. The irony wasn't lost on her. "Sit," Nathaniel said, his tone flat. Iris sat, her hands clenched in her lap. Through her veil she could see him pacing, working through some internal struggle. Finally he stopped and turned to face her. "I'm going to ask you a question," he said quietly, "and I need you to answer honestly. Can you do that?" "Yes." Her voice trembled. "Can you see?" The world stopped. 3 years of deception, of carefully maintained lies, of fear and desperation, all of it came crashing down in those 4 words. "Can you see?" Iris's hands shook. She could lie, could maintain the deception a little longer, buy more time. But Beatrice's words echoed in her mind. "He deserves to love the real you." Slowly, with trembling fingers, Iris reached up and removed her veil. She met Nathaniel's eyes directly for the first time since arriving at Thornwick, and what she saw there, the hurt, the betrayal, the raw pain, nearly destroyed her. "Yes," she whispered. "I can see. I've always been able to see." Nathaniel staggered back as if she'd struck him. His face went pale, then flushed with anger. "How long?" 3 years, since my parents died." 3 years. He repeated the words as though testing them, trying to make them make sense. "You've been lying for 3 years." "Yes." "To everyone." "Yes, to me." His voice cracked on the last word. "Yes, Nathaniel, yes. I've been lying to you from the moment I arrived." Iris stood, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I never meant—" "Never meant what? Never meant to deceive me so thoroughly? Never meant to make a mockery of my sister's actual blindness? Never meant to lie to my face while I made accommodations and worried about your safety and—" He broke off, turning away from her. "Good Lord, Iris. I was afraid." The words sounded pathetic even to her own ears. "After my parents died, men pursued me for my inheritance. They were relentless, cruel. One of them cornered me, told me I'd have no choice but to marry. So I decided to become someone they wouldn't want, someone defective. So you chose blindness. My sister's reality became your costume. I know how it sounds. I know it's unforgivable." Iris moved toward him, desperate to make him understand. But it worked. They left me alone. For 3 years I was finally safe, free to live on my own terms. Until you came here. Until I offered you guardianship out of respect for our mother's friendship. Until I opened my home and my— He stopped himself. "And you continued the lie. I was going to tell you. That night in the conservatory, I almost confessed. But I was scared. Scared you'd send me away. Scared the suitors would return. Scared of losing the first safe place I'd had since my parents died." Nathaniel finally turned to face her, and the coldness in his expression was worse than any anger. "I had a sister who lived with blindness every day of her life. I've watched her struggle and adapt and overcome. I thought I understood what you were experiencing. I thought I could help you the way I've helped Beatrice." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I thought I was seeing you. But I wasn't seeing anything real, was I? Everything else was real. My gratitude, my—" She stopped, not quite brave enough to name what she felt. "The person I was with you. That was real." Was it? Or was that performance too? He moved to his desk, putting distance between them. "Marcus told me 3 days ago. He found you in here, reading documents, seeing perfectly. He wanted me to throw you out immediately, but I didn't believe him. I thought surely he was lying, trying to cause trouble. So I came back early to prove him wrong, to prove that you wouldn't deceive me so completely." Iris felt her world tilting. "Marcus told you?" "Yes, and he told me something else. That you knew about the investment contracts, that you'd read them and said nothing. I was trying to protect you. Those contracts, Nathaniel, they're not what you think. Marcus and Julian are transferring your assets, stealing." "Enough!" Nathaniel's voice cut through her words like ice. "I don't know what games you and Marcus are playing, but I won't be a pawn in them. You've lied about everything else. Why should I believe you about this? Because I'm telling the truth now. Please, Nathaniel, look at the contracts again. Really look at them. Marcus is robbing you. And you're a liar." He said it flatly, without emotion. "A skilled one, admittedly. You fooled me completely. But I'm done being fooled. Nathaniel, you'll leave Thornwick tomorrow morning. I'll arrange transport back to your estate and provide a modest settlement, enough to live on until you reach your majority, but I want you gone." Each word was a knife to her heart. Iris felt herself fracturing, breaking apart under the weight of his rejection. "Please," she whispered, "let me explain about Marcus. Let me show you the proof." "There is no proof. There's only your word, which I've learned is worthless." Nathaniel opened the study door. "Go to your room, Iris, pack your things, and tomorrow get out of my house." Iris stumbled toward the door, then turned back one last time. "I know you hate me. I know I've destroyed whatever trust existed between us. But please, for your own sake, review those contracts. Don't let Marcus steal from you just because you're angry at me. Good night, Miss Calloway." The dismissal was final. Iris fled the study, tears blinding her as she ran toward her room. Behind her, she heard Nathaniel's door slam with devastating finality. In her room, Iris collapsed onto the bed, sobs racking her body. She'd told the truth, and it had destroyed everything. Just as she'd feared, just as she'd known it would. But beneath the grief and pain, one thought kept circling. Marcus had preemptively told Nathaniel about her deception, which meant he'd anticipated her confession, which meant he'd already turned Nathaniel against her, which meant whatever scheme he was running, it was more dangerous than simple theft. A soft knock interrupted her spiral. "Iris, it's Beatrice. May I come in?" Iris opened the door, and Beatrice entered, moving unerringly to sit beside her on the bed. "I heard," she said simply. "The whole house heard, I think." Nathaniel's voice carried, "He hates me. He's hurt. There's a difference." Beatrice found Iris's hand and squeezed it. "He'll come around once the initial shock fades." "No, he won't, and he shouldn't. I lied to him, Beatrice. I used your blindness as a shield and his kindness as a refuge. I don't deserve forgiveness. Perhaps not. But you deserve a chance to make things right." Beatrice was quiet for a moment. "These contracts you mentioned, you really think Marcus is stealing from Nathaniel?" "I know he is. I read them. But Nathaniel won't believe me now. Why would he? Then we need to find proof he can't ignore. Evidence that doesn't rely on your word." Beatrice stood, her expression determined. "Where are the contracts?" "In his study, I think." "But how—" "I may be blind, Iris, but I'm not helpless. And unlike you, I actually can't see what I'm doing, which means I have an excellent excuse for accidentally knocking things over or misplacing documents." She smiled grimly. "Sometimes perceived weakness is its own kind of power." Iris stared at her. "You'd help me, after everything." "I'm helping my brother. You're just the means to do it." But Beatrice's tone was gentle, almost affectionate. "Besides, I think you genuinely care for Nathaniel. Liars don't cry like you're crying." Together they formulated a plan. Beatrice would go to Nathaniel's study under pretense of speaking with him. While there, she'd accidentally cause enough chaos to require assistance. In the confusion, Iris could slip in and retrieve the contracts, the real evidence of Marcus's fraud. It was risky. If they were caught, Nathaniel would never forgive either of them. But it was the only chance they had to protect him. And maybe, possibly, the only chance for Iris to prove that despite her lies, her concern for him was genuine. An hour later, they put the plan in motion. Beatrice made her way to the study, and Iris followed at a distance, pressed into shadows. She heard Beatrice's voice. "Nathaniel, I need to talk to you about Iris." "Not now, Beatrice." "Yes, now. Brother, She made a mistake. A crash. The sound of books tumbling, glass breaking. "Beatrice, are you hurt?" "I'm fine, I just knocked into your desk, everything's falling. Nathaniel, help me." In the chaos, Iris slipped through the door. Nathaniel was helping Beatrice, his back turned. The contracts lay on the desk, partially buried under fallen books. Iris grabbed them, her heart pounding, and fled before anyone could see her. Back in her room, she spread the documents on her bed and read carefully, making notes. The fraud was subtle but undeniable. Assets transferred, funds redirected. Marcus and Julian named as temporary administrators with frighteningly broad powers. But she needed more than just the contracts. She needed proof of intent, of deliberate deception. Iris thought about the heated conversation she'd witnessed between Marcus and Julian that first week. They'd been arguing near the stables, and Marcus had grabbed Julian's arm. The stables. Perhaps there were records there, correspondence, receipts, something that would prove the brothers were working together to defraud Nathaniel. It was after midnight, but Iris couldn't wait until morning. She'd be gone by then, sent away before she could help. Wrapping herself in a dark cloak, Iris slipped out of the house and made her way across the grounds toward the stables. The night was cold, moonless. Perfect cover for her desperate mission. The stables were quiet except for the soft sounds of horses. Iris found a small office in the back, probably used by the head groom. She lit a candle and began searching. It took an hour, but she finally found it, a ledger hidden behind a loose board. Inside, records of payments, bribes to solicitors, forged documents, and most damning, letters between Marcus and Julian discussing their plan to drain Thornwick's resources before Nathaniel realized what was happening. Well, this is unfortunate. Iris spun around. Marcus stood in the doorway, Julian behind him. Both looked grim. "Looking for something, Miss Calloway?" Marcus moved closer, and Iris saw a pistol in his hand. "Or should I say, Lady Spy?" Iris backed away, clutching the ledger. "Nathaniel will see this. He'll know what you've done." "No, he won't, because you're going to have a terrible accident. A blind woman, wandering around in the dark, fell into the lake and drowned. So tragic, so preventable." "I'm not blind, remember? But everyone thinks you are, and by the time your body is found, that's what they'll believe. Poor, unfortunate Miss Calloway, too proud to ask for help, even at night." Marcus raised the pistol. "I'm sorry it came to this. You should have taken my offer. You won't get away with this. Beatrice knows I was investigating you." "Beatrice knows nothing, and even if she suspects, she has no proof. We'll make sure of that." Julian shifted uncomfortably. "Marcus, perhaps we don't need to—" "Shut up." Marcus cocked the pistol. "This ends now." Iris braced herself, her mind screaming. This couldn't be how it ended. Not here. Not like this. Then a voice rang out from behind the brothers. "Put down the weapon, Marcus." Nathaniel stepped into the candlelight, his expression deadly. And behind him, a group of men Iris didn't recognize. Official-looking, serious. Marcus froze. "Nathaniel, this isn't what it looks like. It looks like you're threatening my ward with a pistol. It looks like you've been embezzling from my estate. It looks like you're about to commit murder to hide your crimes." Nathaniel moved closer, and even in the dim light, Iris could see his rage. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't investigate when things didn't add up? She told you." Marcus glared at Iris with pure hatred. "That lying bitch. She tried to tell me. I didn't listen. My mistake." Nathaniel gestured to the men behind him. "But I did listen to my solicitor in London, who noticed irregularities in the contracts, and I listened to my banker, who found suspicious transactions, and I've spent the past 3 days gathering evidence of your fraud." The men moved forward, one of them taking the pistol from Marcus's nerveless fingers. Julian collapsed against the wall, his face ashen. "You can't do this," Marcus said desperately. "We're family. You stopped being family the moment you stole from me, the moment you threatened someone under my protection." Nathaniel's voice was cold as winter. "You'll both face prosecution. I've made sure of it." As the men led Marcus and Julian away, Nathaniel finally turned to Iris. She stood frozen, still clutching the ledger, tears streaming down her face. "You knew," she whispered. "You investigated on your own." "I had to be sure. Had to have irrefutable proof." He moved closer, and she saw his expression soften slightly. What are you doing here, Iris? I needed evidence. Needed to prove to you that I was telling the truth about Marcus, even if I'd lied about everything else. She held out the ledger with shaking hands. I found this, it confirms everything. Nathaniel took the ledger, flipped through it briefly, then set it aside. His eyes never left her face. You could have died tonight. If I hadn't been following Marcus, if I hadn't suspected he might try something desperate. I know, but I had to try. Had to do something to help you, even if you hate me. I don't hate you. The words came out rough, raw. I'm angry, yes, hurt, betrayed. But I don't hate you, Iris. I couldn't hate you if I tried. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm so sorry. For lying. For deceiving you. For using your kindness. You trusted me, and I— Stop. Nathaniel reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek, wiping away tears. We'll talk about it. All of it. But not tonight. Tonight you're safe. That's what matters. He pulled her into his arms, and Iris collapsed against him, sobbing. She'd nearly died. Marcus had been seconds away from killing her, and Nathaniel had saved her, despite her lies, despite everything. Come, he said softly, guiding her toward the house. Let's get you inside. Beatrice is worried sick. They walked in silence, Nathaniel's arm steady around her shoulders. At the house, Beatrice met them at the door, her face tight with anxiety. Is she all right? She's safe. Nathaniel helped Iris to a chair in the drawing room. Marcus and Julian have been arrested. It's over. Beatrice sagged with relief, then moved to Iris's side. You foolish, brave woman. You could have been killed. I know. But you did it anyway. I had to. Nathaniel ordered tea, and they sat together in the quiet drawing room while servants bustled about, preparing rooms for the magistrate who would arrive in the morning to take statements. Finally, Beatrice excused herself. You two need to talk. Properly. She squeezed Iris's hand as she passed. Be honest. Both of you. After she left, Nathaniel sat across from Iris, his expression unreadable. Tell me, he said quietly. Tell me everything. From the beginning. No more lies. So Iris did. She told him about the suitors, about Lord Pembroke's threats, about the desperate choice to pretend blindness. She told him about the 3 years of isolation, the loneliness, the fear that had become her constant companion. And she told him about Thornwick, about how his kindness had made her guilty, how his presence had made her want to stop hiding, how terrifying it had been to realize she was developing genuine feelings for him. I knew it was wrong, she finished, her voice hoarse from talking. I knew I should tell you, but I was a coward. I chose safety over honesty, and I hurt you in the process. I don't expect forgiveness. I just need you to understand why. Nathaniel was silent for a long time, his gaze fixed on the fire. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured, careful. I understand fear. I understand desperation. But Iris, you didn't just lie to me. You made me complicit in your deception. Every accommodation I made, every adjustment I implemented, all of it reinforced your false narrative. Do you understand how that feels? I do. And I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. Sorry isn't enough. He looked at her then, really looked at her eyes meeting his, at her unveiled face, at the real her. But maybe it's a start. Hope flickered in Iris's chest. A start? You risked your life tonight. For me. For the truth. That counts for something. Nathaniel stood, and she thought he might leave. Instead, he held out his hand. Walk with me. Iris took his hand, warm, steady, real, and let him lead her out onto the terrace. Dawn was breaking over Thornwick's grounds, painting everything in shades of gold and pink. When I first learned you could see, Nathaniel said, staring out at the sunrise, I felt like everything between us had been a lie. The conversations, the laughter, the connection I thought we'd built. All of it seemed false. It wasn't false, not the important parts. I know that now. Tonight, when I saw you in that stable facing down Marcus with nothing but a ledger and sheer determination, that was real. That was you. He turned to face her. But I need to know something. If things had been different, if Marcus hadn't threatened you, if there had been no scandal or danger, would you ever have told me the truth? Iris considered lying, considered giving him the answer he wanted to hear, but she'd promised no more lies. I don't know, she admitted. I'd like to think I would have, that eventually I would have found the courage. But honestly, I might have hidden forever if I could, because telling the truth meant losing you, and losing you terrified me more than any suitor ever did. Nathaniel absorbed this, his jaw tight. Then, slowly, he nodded. Thank you for your honesty. Even now, it's the least I owe you. They stood in silence as the sun rose higher, warming the cold autumn air. Iris didn't know what came next. Didn't know if Nathaniel would send her away or let her stay or something in between, but she knew this. She'd told the truth. All of it. And somehow, impossibly, she'd survived. That had to be worth something. I need time, Nathaniel said finally. Time to process this, to understand what I feel beneath the anger and hurt. But Iris, I don't want you to leave. Not yet. You don't? No. Marcus and Julian's trial will require your testimony. You're a witness, possibly the key witness. You need to stay at Thornwick until the legal matters are settled. He met her eyes. And selfishly, I need time to figure out if what I feel for you can survive the truth. What you feel? Iris's heart hammered. I was falling in love with you, with the version of you I thought I knew. Now I need to discover if I can love the real you. The one who lied, but also the one who nearly died trying to protect me. His expression softened slightly. I think I can, but I need time. I'll give you all the time you need. Iris blinked back tears. And Nathaniel, the woman you were falling in love with. She was real. She was me, just hiding behind a veil. Everything else was honest. Then let's find out if honest is enough. Over the following days, life at Thornwick shifted into an uneasy new normal. Marcus and Julian remained in custody, awaiting trial. The magistrate took statements from Iris, Nathaniel, and several servants. The ledger she'd found became key evidence. Nathaniel was cordial but distant, maintaining proper boundaries. He no longer sought out her company or offered his arm during walks. Instead, he treated her with careful politeness, as a guest, not a ward. Certainly not as anything more. It hurt. But Iris understood. She'd shattered his trust, and trust didn't repair overnight. Beatrice, however, remained steadfastly in Iris's corner. He's processing, she explained one afternoon, as they sat in the conservatory. Nathaniel takes time with emotional matters. He'll come around. Maybe. Or maybe he'll realize he can't forgive me. That would be fair. Fair, perhaps. But sad. Beatrice tilted her head. Do you love him? Iris startled. It's a simple question. Yes. The admission came easier than she'd expected. I love him. Not the idea of him or his protection or his position. Him, his dry humor, his kindness to you, the way he thinks before he speaks, the way he defended me even when he was angry. She laughed bitterly. I fell in love with him while lying to his face. I'm not sure that makes me a romantic or a monster. Perhaps a bit of both. Humans are complicated. Beatrice smiled. For what it's worth, I think he loves you too. He's just afraid to admit it. Why afraid? Because loving you means forgiving you, and forgiveness feels like vulnerability. Nathaniel has always been the strong one, the protector. Admitting he loves someone who hurt him, that requires a different kind of strength. Iris hoped Beatrice was right, but as days turned into a week and Nathaniel's polite distance continued, she began to lose hope. Then, one evening, he knocked on her door. May I come in? Iris nodded, stepping aside. He entered, looking tired but resolute. I've been thinking, he said without preamble, about what you said, about everything being real except the blindness. It was true. I know, and I've realized something. He moved to the window, staring out at the darkening grounds. When I replay our conversations, our walks, the moments when I thought we were connecting, they still feel genuine. Your laugh, your wit, your observations about life, those couldn't have been performed. They were you. They were me. Iris moved closer, heart pounding. The truest version of me I've been in 3 years. Then I need to ask you something. If we could start over, if I could court you properly, honestly, with no deception between us, would you want that? Iris felt her breath catch. Court me. Yes. I want to know the real Iris Calloway. The woman who's brave enough to risk death for someone else's fortune. The woman who confessed to my sister, even though it could have ruined her. The woman who... He turned to face her fully. The woman I'm fairly certain I'm in love with despite my better judgment. You love me? I'm trying not to. You're infuriating and complicated, and you've made my life infinitely more difficult. His expression softened. But yes, I love you, even angry, even hurt. I love you. Iris felt tears slip free. I love you too. I love you so desperately it terrifies me. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. The kiss was inevitable, necessary. 3 weeks of tension and longing and carefully maintained distance combusting into something desperate and real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathaniel rested his forehead against hers. "No more lies," he murmured. "Promise me. No more hiding." "No more lies," Iris promised. "No more hiding. Just me. Just us. That's all I want." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the quiet room. Then Nathaniel pulled back slightly, his expression turning serious. "There's something you should know. Marcus and Julian's trial is scheduled for next month. You'll need to testify. Your true identity, your sight, will become public knowledge." Iris felt cold dread settle in her stomach. "The suitors, they'll know I was never blind." "Yes, which is why I've made arrangements." Nathaniel took her hands. "I'm petitioning the courts to make our guardianship arrangement permanent. Not just until you reach your majority, but indefinitely. As long as you're legally under my protection, those men can't touch you." "That's incredibly generous, but nothing. You're under my protection now, Iris, and I protect what's mine." His grip tightened. "If you'll have me, if you'll accept my courtship, then eventually I'd like that protection to be more than just legal. I'd like it to be permanent." Iris understood what he was offering. Marriage. A real future together, built on truth instead of deception. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes to all of it." Nathaniel smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him in days, and kissed her again. This time it was softer, sweeter, a promise instead of a confession. When he finally left her room, Iris sank onto her bed, feeling lighter than she had in 3 years. The veil lay discarded on her dresser, unused, unnecessary. She was done hiding, done lying, done being anyone but herself. And somehow, impossibly, the real her was exactly what Nathaniel wanted. The trial came and went with dramatic efficiency. Marcus and Julian were found guilty of fraud, embezzlement, and attempted murder. The evidence was overwhelming. The contracts, the ledger Iris had found, testimony from solicitors they'd bribed. Iris testified without the veil, her sight now public knowledge. She faced down their defense attorney with calm precision, explaining her deception without shame, and her discovery of their crimes without exaggeration. Nathaniel sat in the gallery throughout, his presence a steady anchor. The verdict brought relief. Marcus was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Julian, who had cooperated with authorities, received a lighter sentence of 10 years. Both were stripped of their family connections and rights to any Greaves property. After the trial, Nathaniel took Iris for a long walk through Thornwick's gardens. "It's over," he said simply. "They can't hurt you or me or anyone else." "It feels surreal." Iris breathed in the autumn air, enjoying the simple freedom of walking without performance. "For 3 years I lived in fear, and now you're free, truly free." They walked to the conservatory where they'd first really talked, where Nathaniel had told her about Beatrice, and Iris had begun to realize her deception couldn't last forever. "I have something for you," Nathaniel said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Iris's heart raced. "Nathaniel! Wait, let me say this." He opened the box, revealing a ring, simple, elegant, perfect. "Iris Calloway, you're stubborn and reckless, and you drove me half mad with your lies. You're also brave and clever, and the most fascinating woman I've ever met. I love you, all of you, the parts that are easy to love and the parts that are complicated. Will you marry me?" Iris looked at the ring, at Nathaniel's hopeful face, at the future stretching before them, honest and real and terrifying in the best possible way. "Yes," she said, laughing through tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her, and for the first time in 3 years Iris felt completely, utterly seen, not in spite of her truths, but because of them. 3 months later, Iris stood in Thornwick's drawing room, her hand resting on her stomach. Nathaniel was in his study working through correspondence, while Beatrice sat nearby embroidering with uncanny precision. "You're going to tell him soon, I assume?" Beatrice asked without looking up. Iris smiled. "How do you always know? You've been queasy in the mornings. You declined wine at dinner last week, and you keep touching your stomach like it's something precious." Beatrice set down her embroidery and turned her face toward Iris. "I'm happy for you. Both of you. Thank you. For everything. For not condemning me. For helping me find my way back to the truth. You found your own way. I just pointed you in the right direction." Beatrice stood and embraced her. "Now go tell my brother he's going to be a father before he notices on his own and feels left out." Iris found Nathaniel bent over estate reports, his brow furrowed in concentration. She moved behind him and wrapped her arms around his shoulders. "You're distracting me," he murmured, but he leaned into her touch. "Good. I have something important to tell you." He turned in his chair, pulling her onto his lap. "More important than tenant disputes and crop rotations? Impossible. I'm pregnant." Nathaniel froze, his eyes going wide. "You're pregnant? We're going to have a baby." For a moment he just stared at her, then his face broke into the most brilliant smile Iris had ever seen. He stood, lifting her with him, spinning her around. "A baby. We're having a baby." He set her down carefully, suddenly cautious. "Should I be careful? Are you all right? Do you need to sit down?" Iris laughed. "I'm fine. Perfectly healthy. Just happy. Terrified, but happy. I'm terrified too. And deliriously happy." Nathaniel cupped her face in his hands. "I love you so much. Thank you for this gift. Thank you for seeing me. For loving me anyway." Iris leaned into his touch. "For teaching me that being seen isn't weakness. It's the only way to truly live." They stood like that, holding each other, thinking about the future that stretched before them. A future built on truth and trust and love that had survived deception and pain and come out stronger. Outside the study window, Thornwick's gardens bloomed with late autumn roses. Inside, two people who'd found each other in spite of lies held on to each other and the promise of tomorrow. Iris had spent 3 years hiding in darkness, using blindness as a shield against the world. Nathaniel had taught her that being seen, truly, completely, honestly, wasn't something to fear. It was the greatest gift one person could give another, and she'd finally learned to accept it. Thank you for staying with Iris and Nathaniel through every twist, every revelation and every hard-won moment of truth. Their journey from deception to devotion moved me as I told it, and I hope it moved you too. If this story touched your heart, I'd be so grateful if you'd take a moment to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. What moment resonated with you most? I read every single comment, and your words mean the world to me. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. I have more tales of love, redemption, and second chances waiting for you, each one crafted with the same care and emotion you experienced today. Thank you for being here. You're the reason these stories exist, and I'm honored to share them with you.